Welcome back to Tune In with MPSCS. I'm Brad Stoddard, Director of the MPSCS, and we're continuing our celebration for our 30th anniversary by reflecting on the early days of the system with two of the key figures who helped shape it, Jeff Steffel and Chuck Cousino. All right, now this follows what we were just talking about. Can you two talk about the culture you created for the successful team and project?
I got one I want to talk about right away.
Yes, sir.
This is just I was talking about it earlier with Bob. This had to do with Ada Township. We had a lawsuit after we got the legislation passed. Even still had a lawsuit with Ada Township and a tower. And I think the judge had a ruling, or someplace maybe our attorneys went in and said before they, hey, we're working on the site right now. We're getting ready. We're doing stuff. Well, at the moment we weren't. That's when, I don't know where Jeff and I were. We were someplace together, and I remember Jeff saying to Theron and Bob at the time, tomorrow,
get your saws.
You need to go out there with a couple of chainsaws and start cutting down trees. Just cut down, make it look like there's something going on there, so we could. Right. So those two worked together to do that, and it happened to be the same time because we did it every year. We had a little team Christmas parties. The team being Buford Golf, Motorola, and the state police. Mm-hmm. So we got to watch, and by the way, that tree cutting ceremony at Ada Township got news coverage. And so we were able to watch Betas and Theron on TV. We're at some place having a couple of cold ones, and we're watching those two on TV cutting down trees to get ready to confirm that we were doing work at Ada Township.
Yeah.
So that was just, there are hundreds of stories of collaboration and working together, finding a problem, coming up. Somebody would have a problem. We'd have a problem. State would have a problem. We just put the problem on the table and figure out what the best solution was and move forward with it. We happened every day.
We could have had 200 contract changes in that first phase of them all covered each other, one thing or another. I mean, we just did, whoever could do it, did it.
Right.
And sometimes they couldn't, sometimes we couldn't, and you just did what had to be done.
Right.
That was just very simple.
And that same culture that, the three of you gentlemen, came up with, you no doubt drove or shared with your teams that this would be our approach. We're in this together. Because I remember that as a young engineer of the statement that you made to me as my captain is, we're not going to fail, but we're all going to win together. This is going to be a successful project. And it was, the powerful messages out of that was, you're not going to fail because we're not going to fail. But it was that collaboration. I was not in the same circles as you gentlemen then, but I was working with all of the team members. Steve Vidra was one I spent probably most of my time with back then. And I recall even a time, this was the culture. I remember the jovial Jeff Steffel to the straight-faced Jeff Steffel was after hours. Steve Vidra we were having a going-away party for Steve's. And you would ask Steve, what's he going to take with him from this project? And with straight face, he said, I'm going to take Brad with me. And you went from smiling to standing tall. He said, you didn't realize, in the contract, it says. That was probably one of my proudest moments right then. I felt about that tall when it came out, but it was definitely humorous at the time. But, I'd say that, the years I've been around and, the personnel that have come and gone, in either of your seats, since the culture has continued, which was that collaboration. Let's work together. Your problem is my problem and the solution is our solution. And, fortunately, looking back, in my career stayed almost 28 years. That was the same what has been used across 28 years. So that foundation you guys created for a culture, thank you, because it's still in play today in both teams, and those that are new to it on either team, they quickly understand the culture. And I know one of the remarks I'd made in the past, especially speaking for the team that works with us, you can see the ones that really embrace it. As I shared earlier, it's a culture that the veterans truly embrace. And pretty early on, you could almost identify what personnel within a couple of weeks, this was not their environment. And usually those were the ones that they enjoyed it, but it wasn't for them. They'd find a way out. But the others, this is what they were looking for prior career or something.
It takes the right people to make it work. It always, that was the thing that made this all successful, is there was a lot of the right people at the right spot.
You know, we had the system go down for 24 hours one time. And I think you were on board when that happened. And the backup didn't work out here, and everybody was on their own tower. But we survived it. But then we had a meeting, and one of the NCC engineers said, well, we've been working for a year. These 24 hours isn't bad. I don't know if you remember that, Brad. I don't know if you're in that meeting. And I just that's the most angry I was ever with my staff, is when he said that. Oh, a day here and there, that's not bad. And it was just so unacceptable. And the other people in the room kind of felt the same way, but then that guy left after a while because he didn't fit.
He did. Yeah, he did. I know who you're talking about. Yeah, I know his name very well.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. He did not fit.
He did not fit, and I just couldn't tolerate that. I was just jumped.
Systems like that can't be out.
Yeah.
No.
They can't be out anytime.
Yeah.
Any time is too much.
Yeah, and this is where it continues to show the relationship. I remember a time I was at a conference in a completely different time zone, and I was standing there with it was actually John Zadar, and he and I had probably had a pretty good evening catching up on history, and he gets a phone call, and then he walks away and he comes back to me and he said, did you know your system just went down? And I thought, man, how is this happening? He knows before I do. But it was one of those where we went through an upgrade. It created an issue with City of Detroit. They fixed the City of Detroit, and it broke the rest of the system. But the remark that both of you made is spot on. What we have had with the system since the beginning, since really that first 24-hour outage, that would never happen again. And the few times that we've had even just planned outages, they're not out that long. And so the one incident that happened in City of Detroit and the subsequent rest of the system, it was minutes. But I remember sitting down with a colonel at the time, and she made it very clear this would never happen again. And even at that time, for me, I'm thinking it was minutes. I did not point out to her that we'd lived, a prior experience, but there'd been the conditioning at that point of the system. The system doesn't go down. And, with technology today, it's even tougher than what it was in the early days. There's a lot of analog technology. With today's, now it's a lot of digital technology, but it was that same belief back then. Again, this is the foundation of culture. It will not go down like that.
Yep.
So now we'll get into maybe a little more jovial part of this. You've talked about the things that you've learned, the things that you did in the system. Now we're, for the most part, outside the statute of limitations. So now you can speak freely. You both have been retired for a period of time.
Don't believe it.
I never wrote a book, but I may have read one. So what are the most, as you look back on your career, what are the most proud moments that you would identify?
Mine is this system. doing the team we had, the people we had working it. It was a when you're in the middle of it. How do I say it? When you're in the swamp with the alligators, it doesn't feel like it's fun. But when you look back on it, you look at it and you go, boy, that was really an exciting time. We really did some really, really neat stuff, and it was a really, really exciting time. So that was probably, I've had 2 or 3 things that are highlights of my Motorola career, but this system is the number one of it, still to this day. It just the way everything worked, the way everything kind of came together. It didn't start out that way. It didn't. I don't mean to speak before I say it. Harry Warner was not necessarily a huge Motorola fan at the beginning, but over time, and not a very long time, first he got comfortable, and then he got supportive of, and it was just those kinds of things happened. It just gradually just happened. I don't know how else to say it, but it was just that it made the project something that could have been not as successful, very, very successful, because the way everybody worked at it.
Right. Well, I've had a lot of success throughout my career. MPSCS is huge. There are a couple elements to it that I'm very proud of that people don't know about. One of them is starting.
Wait, I know.
What?
The lady, you went into her house.
Was it blinking light?
No, when she complained about the light, you went into the ladies' bedroom. Was that one of them?
At night, if I recall. Yeah.
Well, right, the East Lansing Tower site.
Oh,
called it,
yeah.
And the white light was flashing.
Yeah.
And so I said, okay, I'll go talk to her. So I go talk to her, and she says, and I go in, and she says, it's flashing on my bedroom wall. I said, okay, I believe you. And she says, no, you got to see it. You got to see it. And I go, well, what? And I mean, the wall was lighting up. And that's when I said, we're going to do all of it.
Jeff did come back the next day. He said, we are going to do it. The lighting system is not going to be white at night anymore.
No, it's going to be red at night.
It's going to be going to a dual light system.
I wasn't necessarily. That wasn't the highlight.
All right, sorry. Okay, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
So I had 15 people, and I got this whole division I'm going to start out with. So I got to figure out how I'm going to do this. Now I'm going to build this, and I got a quality insurance people that I don't know. I haven't come to trust them yet, and I didn't know. The one thing I decided to do is, I remember when I picked my executive secretary, Mary Sue Raycraft, I did not interview anyone in the division for a job. Not one time did I interview anyone. I had people do it. I wanted them to grow. Mary Sue Raycraft, who was a wonderful, wonderful lady. She was a wonderful worker. I'd never heard of her before I hired her. But I had 3 people do the interviews, Jimmy Downer and Harry Warner, and they said she's the one. And I did that with everyone I hired, including you.
You were in my interview, pal.
Huh?
You were in my interview, pal.
Well, yeah, I was.
Yeah.
But I had to be. I had to be there because I didn't have anyone else, and I had personality.
Yeah.
But I was one of 3.
Yeah, you're right. There was 4 of you.
Yeah, there was 4 of
Yeah,
us.
yeah.
So I listened to them, and then I ultimately made the decision. But I hired the best people I could find at MSP. And I took Lori Fierro with the budget. I had great people that I worked with out of the division, and I think that worked out real well. The outstanding comedic highlight of my career is I couldn't understand exactly what a star bracket was on the towers. And all of them had these star brackets. They're at different levels. I didn't know what they were. So I told her, and you know, you can explain it. I understand it anchors the guide wires and stuff, but I couldn't see it. I'll never see it. So I said, well, you guys pick a tower that I'm going to climb. And so they picked a tower out at Owasso. I think it was 360 feet. And Terrence says, "You sure you want to do this?" And I said, "Well, yeah, I want to do it. I'm going to jump out of helicopters on the E-team. I've been shot at. Yeah, I can do this." So they give me one of them buckets and they put a radio in it. And that bucket was just swinging back and forth. But we got on top of the tower and it went down. And there's like half my division is there. And I come down and it turns out they had a pool as to whether I'd get up to the top or and come back down. And I wondered, I says, why do we have to have all of these techs here and stuff? But they were all there. Yeah, at the top of that tower, I wish I'd have bought a lunch.
Really?
It was,
The view.
yeah, the view and the quietness. It was very serene on top.
Yeah.
It was only 360 feet, but I thought it was pretty cool. But that was, and you know what? It was a strange thing. It taught me something about leadership too, because I wasn't, to those people, I wasn't afraid to get my feet wet.
Right?
And whatever they were doing, I'd be happy to do it with them if I had the time. But the people, you know, I suppose I should have said, "The hell are you guys doing? Why shouldn't you be doing your job? Why are 12 of you at the top?" But it's okay. It's okay. And there's a lot of highlights to what we did, and there's too many to mention because we're outside the box all the time on this thing. There were no rules.
Right.
There were no rules for talk groups. There was no rules for anything. And Lieutenant Bolger would say, "Well, how you doing?" I'd say, "I don't know. I mean, I'm winging it, man." And it was a great project, though.
Right.
It was so, I feel proud to be a part of it.
Well, we're proud to be part of it with both of you gentlemen, that's for sure. And I think Chuck was sharing probably one of your happiest moments, being in that bedroom late at night, checking the lights. Are there any other funny stories that you gentlemen recall from the early days of the system?
Oh, geez.
I have another one. I have one. Well, that one wasn't funny. That one was serious.
Yeah,
This was in negotiate. We're doing negotiations. And I may have brought it up the last time. We're doing negotiations, and the particular topic to the day is pricing. And we're at MSP building in
The aviation.
So we're in there, and we're going to talk about pricing, and the state required unit pricing by site on everything. Well, you can only imagine what that spreadsheet looked like.
How much the bolts cost.
It was D-size plottings, and we're getting ready to talk about those with the state's team. And we're all sitting down, getting ready to go. Next thing you know, everybody in the state's team pulls a magnifying glass out of their pockets to start the negotiations, to go over what we're going to talk about. So that was how that day's negotiation started, was with magnifying glass.
He said, "Did you see the print on this one?" And I says, "Well, you get a bunch of magnifying glasses. Let's just look at this." That was fun. That was fun.
Yeah, it was good. And even, speaking of aviation, I remember that early on. I think the only times I've ever been to aviation other than, bring your child to work day was during those events out there. And I didn't understand that at first. Like, we had a conference room at our shop. You guys had a conference room. But it wasn't until you made the remark at some point later of you want to get everyone isolated. So you didn't have anything to detract.
Nothing.
Yeah.
Nope.
And that was one of the things, early in my career that I learned that there's a lot of value in that, being isolated with a team that someone can't pull you away. So,
well, the big conference call was the last one, and I don't know who was on the other end, but we had it at your attorney's office. And the problem is the state couldn't fund these. They couldn't fund it unless they owned it. And that applied to the software as well. And Motorola had, do you remember?
Oh, I remember.
Motorola had never done anything but a lease with their software.
right.
And I don't know, I remember we had a bunch of us at that long table, and John was there, and all the legal people. I have no idea who was on the other end. I had no idea who we were talking to, and our AG was there, and Debbie Devine, and she basically explained to your people why we had to own the software. And then there was this pregnant pause. I'm sure they muted all the microphones at the other end, and we're sitting there, and then it was I don't know how long it was. It was a long time in my mind. Finally, they said yes, and we were able to execute that contract. But that was another big thing. Nobody knew anything about any of that stuff.
Yeah, that was a little bit unusual for Motorola.
Right.
Yeah. And we were just sitting there because that was the last linchpin we had.
Right.
And, of course, that was before the all the lawsuits and all that other stuff. But at least we had a contract in place that we could work from.
Right.
And the detail of that thing was amazing. The Isaacs Fund was amazing, the way he put that together. And nobody was going to screw with us. We had additional monies for the system as long as we were building guide towers, which is what we did as wherever we could.
Every chance we could get.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, we brought back the Isaac Fund for part of the life cycle project. So we followed suit on what we learned years prior. We just didn't do guide towers. We took other approaches.
that was another MPS invention. The Attorney General said, well, I've never heard anything like that. And I said, so what? This is how we got to build this thing. And that way we didn't run into all these money people saying, what are you doing with extra money? Where's it going? All because they'd micromanage you.
Yeah.
DMB they let us build it because they couldn't. But they were watching.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, well, it was a successful build that you guys started.
I said throughout the project, and still to this day, I think it was important, no offense to anybody, but that on the front end, the project was run by the state police. And the reason I say that is, as a paramilitary operation, they're used to getting things done, not taking weeks to make decisions, but coming across the problem and then coming up with a solution in a very short, timely fashion. You don't, this is from my standpoint, I've worked with other organizations, and you don't always get that. And if you're going to get a project done in a timely fashion, you need to have a customer who can make decisions that way.
And I would agree. I mean, prior to my role, as Jeff would recall, I came from space and defense. I worked in a military organization, so for me it was an easy adoption coming in, because there was an approach, and the decision was going to be made, and you were going to follow the decision. And I think here's one of my funny stories. It was in the radio room at Collins Road, and this wasn't long after Jeff had pulled all the engineers in there and let us know what the day would be. It was 8 to 5. Lunch was from 12 to 1. That didn't mean 11:58 to 1:05. It was 12 to 1. And oh, by the way, you guys show up in suits every day. And I thought, man, what the hell did I do? And it wasn't. I think one particular engineer who may have participated in the Livingston County debacle as well, and posed a question back, kind of pushing back. And Jeff's response at that point was, I make the decisions, you follow what I tell you. And then grabbed the door and walked out. But it was the look that I became accustomed to, which meant he was the one that was making the calls. And if he said do it, then we were going to do it. And me questioned 30 times, the decision was made. And
I wanted to separate you guys from it.
you did.
In the sense of dressing as an engineer coming to work. And it worked.
It did. You shared, I think we talked about this 5 years ago when we did this. And for all those years, I thought, man, what the hell did I do? Everyone else is showing up in jeans and work boots, and here I had to show up in a suit every day. But it was what you shared then, what was very powerful. is, the division or others, they weren't used to having engineers on staff. So there was a level of respect that was needed. And if we were the respect that we would receive, we had to also show that we had earned that respect, and showing up looking professional was top part of that. As well as another part I'm not sure you may recall, but I recall this vividly. I don't even think I was working 30 days on the job, and I'd moved from Colorado, as you may recall, and still had Colorado plates on my 4Runner at the time. Had a little bit longer hair as well, and it was on a Friday, and Jeff just pops into my office. He's saying hi, have a good weekend. He said, hey, two things. One, hair off your collar Monday morning. So I laughed, and he said, hair off your collar, official order, whatever, hair off your collar. And I was a little stunned. He said, oh, the other thing, you've lived here long enough to get Michigan plates in your car. Take care of that, too. I still remember that afternoon vividly to this day. So as kind of running towards the end here, a lot of history and laughter and memories. But, if you were to give advice for someone that was interested in working in, public safety communications or with the MPSCS today, what would be the advice that you give those individuals before they consider a career in this space?
As a technician or as a communicator, or
It could be any one of them.
I don't think that any of us planned to be where we ended up. I think that we all got an education, did certain things, and what Chuck did and what I did is I think we worked very hard at whatever we were assigned to do for a while. My career was very varied. I did training, and then I did legal stuff, and then was downtown for 5 years, and then I got executive administration, and I worked hard at all those things.
Yes.
If you want to get into your arena, you've got two alternatives. One is going to be a technical side, an engineering type of a background, or the other is going to be working with people and selling and training and that type thing. I don't know how you get there. If you decide you want to become a part of this and you come in, then you got to buy in wholesale and work your butt off. And it always works. It always works. All successful people I know didn't end up wanting to be where they're at, but their work brought them there. They just worked hard, and they did 8 hours work for 8 hours pay. They enjoyed the people around them. They weren't a problem, and success follows. My father, a long time ago, told me 90% of the success is just showing up. And I think he was absolutely right. I always listened to that. I didn't use sick days. I didn't cause problems. I just came in and worked. And it works. So I don't know how you get into the career, but once you're here, we continue that process, and things are going to be, and you're never going to get rich working for the state.
So true.
On the Civil Service Commission, we were giving out raises, and we're doing stuff to retain people. And one of our meetings, I said, anyone that's in this for the money, this is the wrong place to be. And so you don't do it. I'm totally happy with what I did with my career, with my law degree and all this stuff. I met great people. Yourself, Chuck, what a bridge. I'm very fortunate that way. And I've always looked at my life as being that way. So I used to tell staff, you don't deserve. My job is not to make you happy here. You come here and you do your work. You got problems at home, you got a bad marriage, you work your way through it. But here you go by the company line, you do the company business, and you work hard. And you'll be happy here. It'll be a respite from whatever you have at home. But don't bring it here into the office.
Right.
That's a biggie.
Great advice. Great advice. Chuck?
Mine's relatively simple. It is, if you're coming into any organization, before you decide to come in, understand the objectives and understand the expectations what are the expectations that are going to be placed on you as a person? Like dress code, or it doesn't matter what it is, hours that you work. We would have meetings, and we'd sit down, and people would say, I said, we gotta accelerate the schedule. We gotta do this, or we gotta do that. And we'd look at our schedule and get everything done and say, well, that's 8 hours a day, 8 hours a day, 8 hours a day. I said, yeah, but I said, if you work 16 hours a day, I said, we can cut that time in half. I said, that still gives you 8 hours of your own time, so you can cut that in half a little bit. But it was mostly said and just, not 100% said and just, but mostly said and just.
I never worked a 40-hour work week on this project.
And I would say
50 or 60 hours.
The last thing I'd say about this whole thing is something I believe firmly, and that is, and I tell everybody this, or I tell a lot of people this, the harder I worked, the luckier I got. And I think that's something that everybody, because people will say, man, you're so lucky. I said, the harder I worked, the luckier I got.
Right.
And I think that's a part that sometimes people miss. They think somebody just got lucky. Nobody just gets lucky.
Sure.
It doesn't work that way.
Luck is when opportunity meets preparedness.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah. Have to make sure that we put that one on a wall someplace. Yeah. And that's a good, follow-up as well as, when I did the podcast with Theron Chenille and Bob Batis, we kind of closed it out with, some of those best advice or quotes that we kind of live by. Is there any that you two gentlemen had received in your career that you still have as a mantra that still plays out in your mind?
I do have one. It was in my high school newspaper. I thought it was pretty interesting. And it was a quote. I was playing football and running track and doing all that stuff. It said, time and patience does more than strength and passion. And I've always kind of followed that rule. And the other thing is I've got an article I had when I was working about happiness and simplicity. Watching a sunset. I mean, find your moments in the simple things in life. Don't make it complicated. And, just in vacation recreations, you can't be happy unless you're productive. All the philosophers, when I was doing philosophy, well, not philosophy, but I was teaching at Grand Valley, I had a class in ethics. All those people say you got to be productive. And happiness and leisure is your time away from being productive. And it just kind of goes with the flow. It's all within yourself, and just make it work. Be happy with your family, your job. I think Chuck's exactly right. Know what you're getting into. Commit. I feel bad for the people these days that don't want to work, because I don't know how they can achieve happiness. I don't know how they can feel like they've accomplished anything, how they've been productive. I was just talking to a friend of mine on the way in who's fighting a long-term illness, and he says, I'm just the luckiest guy in the world in many ways. And Gary, he was 37 when he died, and he says, I'm the luckiest man in the world. And that's how you got to approach things. If you do that, you work hard, you're going to find success.
I think there's a few in there that we'll print out, put on the wall. It was pretty good. Thanks, Jeff. Chuck?
Just throughout my career, or early in my career, Motorola career, I would think about the people that I reported to. And some people I reported to, and I went, man, I would go any place that person asked me to go. I would, if they called me up and said, you want to go work over here, I'd just go because I liked that person and I liked working with them. There weren't very many of them. It was a very small number of those people who could call me and I would go. And then halfway through my career, I ran across the saying and I went, that explains it. And this is the one, and I still have this on my office at home today. And it's, a leader is someone you would follow to a place that you wouldn't ordinarily go on your own.
Well, that's good. Yeah.
And I went, that's it.
Yeah.
That's it. Those 2 or 3 people fit that category.
Yeah.
And the rest of them don't.
Yep. Well, no doubt there's people in your career would say the same about you, and I'm sure they would point to the same things, that you were the leader for them, that they would have gone to some of those locations. I know recently this conversation I had with Bob Bates, same thing, is he ended up in a place that he didn't plan on being here, and look at where he's at 30 years later. So, I think no doubt the quotes and advice that both of you have lived by have demonstrated very successful careers, both in your professional space as well as your personal space. Very proud family men of your own kids and grandkids and opportunities. I had the in my role, I get the opportunity to talk to a lot of people around the nation, and not that long ago I had the opportunity to speak with a gentleman that knew Jeff from his life prior to the MPSCS, Mr. Craig Allen. And that in itself was an interesting conversation, because I'd always seen Jeff in one light. I've known Craig Allen for a number of years, and as he was sharing the Jeff that he remembered from a different light, it put a little focus on it, like that here was a gentleman that was more laughter and fun outside of work that I didn't get a chance to see so many years ago. But I think it's those aspects as I look back on my time with you all today and 5 years ago, and even through my career of working with both of you gentlemen, and the leadership that I've gained from both of you that have molded key pieces of my own career on how I approach things. A little softer on the hairstyles than what I recalled in the past, but it's a good thing that we're meeting today and not back in May, or else you would still remind me on official orders. So
I would.
But Jeff and Chuck, thank you for hanging out with me today and spending some time with us. As I believe these podcasts have been really important for a few multiple reasons. One is I've known both you gentlemen for a number of years, but there's a lot of our team as well as our listeners that may not have had the opportunity to know either one of you or both of you. And it's an opportunity for them to get a chance to know both of you as gentlemen and leaders, the vision that you had in the system, the work that you had in the system, because at some point, none of us will be here. And it gives the opportunity for the next generation to look back on the leaders that were here and understand the decisions were made, the difficulties that were put in place, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, or maybe even 50 years ago. If video still exists in 50 years, maybe you'll be holograms at that point. Hard to say. But I'm glad we're able to carve out some time to chat again 5 years later. Unfortunately, we weren't able to celebrate as we had planned for our 25th, but hope to see both of you gentlemen for our 30th. Plan to definitely celebrate all of the system's success over 30 years that both of you not only can say you had a hand in, but you created a culture that not only defined what we still live to this day in Michigan, but that same culture that replicated itself across multiple other states. And still to this day, I still get phone calls on, how did you guys do that? How do you do that? And it's pretty easy. I just let them know, hey, you just call Chuck or Jeff. They have a little consultant shingle out, so they'd be glad to help you. But that wraps up today's special 30th anniversary edition of Tune In with the MPSCS. We hope you enjoyed this look back at the history and evolution of one of the world's most advanced public safety communication system that started right here in Michigan. As we've shared in the past, we would not have the success that we have in the MPSCS if we did not have the leadership that we've had through the years. So thanks to these two gentlemen, you created a foundation that set us in motion 30 years later, and be able to stand on top of that mountain with success that you both envisioned years ago. And we've been able to carry that torch ever since. So we hope you all enjoyed the show, and we'll be back with you soon. Thank you.